All right, this is the study guide for Algebra 1, Unit 9, the unit called Quadratics. So that's what we're going to be working on. Starting with problem number 1. Problem number 1, 2, and 3 deal with some formulas that we learned. So number 1, they ask, which of the following sets could be the sides of a right triangle? So to find a right triangle, the formula you're going to use is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. When they give you a list, a set, as in they do here, 2, 3, and square roots of 13, that's A, B, and C in order. All right, so you just got to take these sets and put them in this equation. So the top equation would say, the first one would say 2 squared plus 3 squared equals square roots of 13 squared. So 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, and square roots of 13 squared is 13. Remember, when you square a square root, you get itself outside of square root. So 9 plus 4 is 13 equals 13. That's a right triangle, okay? Number 2, they ask, what is the distance between the points 2, 5, and 5, 7? So 2, 5, and 5, 7. So the formula for this is D equals x2 minus x1 squared plus, I forgot my squared right there, y2 minus y1 squared. Now this 1 and 2 here really don't matter, other than if you go 5 minus 2, you have to go 7 minus 5. So if this is going to be 2, it's going to go in the first spots on x and y. You can't go 5 minus 2 and 5 minus 7, all right? So that's what those are for, the 1 and 2. All right, so we'll do this problem. Distance equals, and we'll say 5 minus 2 squared plus 7 minus 5 squared. So 5 minus 2 is 3 squared plus 2 squared. Oh, I think we already know the answer to this. 3 squared is 9, 2 squared is 4, and then the square root of 13. 9 plus 4 is 13. And then problem number 3, they ask, find the midpoint of 2 points. All right, so the formula for midpoint is 13. I'm jumping way ahead. Number 3. The formula for midpoint is x2 plus x1 divided by 2, and y2 plus y1 divided by 2. All right, again, the 1s and 2s don't really matter, other than you know one set is 1 and 1 is the other. The other is 2. So they want you to find the midpoint of the 2 points, 3, 10, and 7, 8. All right? So to find this, you're just going to add your x's. Your x's are, remember, a set is always x, y. It's always x, y, all right? So 3 plus 7 is 10, divided by 2 would be 5, and then y would be 10 plus 8 is 18, divided by 2 is 9. So the midpoint is going to be at 5, 9. All right, problem number 4, they ask if this equation is a quadratic equation. So remember, to be a quadratic equation, you need an exponent. You need it to be x squared, not x cubed, not x to the 4th. You have to have an x squared or a y squared. Whatever your variable is, you have to have a squared, an exponent to make a quadratic equation, because it makes the line curve. And that's what we're talking about. Quadratics are lines on the graph that curve rather than are straight. All right, so we'll work out this formula. This is distributive property. We'll have to go y times y is y squared. Y plus 2y. Y times 2 is 2y minus y equals 5. All right, so y squared minus 2 minus 1 is 1y minus 5 equals 0. There I put it in standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So as long as you have this, you have a quadratic, okay? You have to have this. You can be without the y, it's still quadratic, but you have to have the exponent. Problem number 5, they say, which of the following describes the translation of the graph y equals x squared, which is a quadratic equation, to obtain the graph of y equals negative x squared minus 4, okay? So number 1, this is a parabola, or parabola. The graph y equals x squared is a parabola that opens up from the center, all right? So as soon as it's negative, we know instead of opening upward, it's opening downward. Another way to say that is to open, instead of to open downward, you could say reflect over the x-axis. All right, so if it's negative, it reflects over the x-axis. And then remember that if this isn't in parentheses, this is moving up or down. All right, if it looks like this, this moves it left or right. This outside moves up or down. And if it's negative, it moves down. So this is reflected over the x-axis and shifted down 4 units. All right, problem number 6. They ask you to write this equation of 2x plus 1 times x minus 2 equals 0 in standard form. So remember, in standard form, or general, they call it general form. General form is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So they want everything on one side equals 0, but you have to do your FOIL method, to solve for this. So remember, FOIL method is multiplying first terms and then outer terms, inner terms, and then the last terms, all right? So first terms are 2x times x is 2x squared. Outer is 2x times negative 2 is negative 4x. X times 1 in the inner terms is x. And last is 1 times negative 2, which is negative 2. So it's 2x squared. Negative 4 plus 1 is negative 3x. Minus 2 equals 0. There it is in standard form. Ax squared plus bx plus c. They ask you actually to say what are the values of a, b, and c. So remember, a is just whatever's in front of x. A is 2. B is negative 3, remember that, negative, and C is negative 2. Okay, watch those signs. And if there's not a number there, it's going to be 1. If this just said x squared minus 3x minus 2, then x would be 1. All right, number 7, they ask you what would be added to x squared minus 6 to make a perfect square trinomial. So you're going to use a perfect square trinomial in completing the square. If they ever ask you to complete the square, the way you do this so you can solve it easily, all right? So to complete the square, number 1, if there's a coefficient here, that's a number connected to the variable, we have to divide that by it. But there's not, so that makes it simpler. You just take half of this number, 6, half of 6 is 3. So 6 divided by 2 equals 3, and then square it. 3 squared is 9. So that's what you would add to this equation. Now it's a perfect square, so if you were to factor it, you could just go square root of x squared is x, square root of 9 is 3, and it's minus plus. That means they're both minus, and it's a perfect square trinomial. So it can be factored to 2 matching binomials. Number 8 talks about the equation of a circle. They say, which of the following points lies on the circle whose center is at the origin, so that it means its center is 0, 0, and whose radius is 5. So you need to put these sets of points they give you in there and put equals 5 to see which one is the same distance from the center as the radius is, right? Because the radius tells you how far center to the edge. So we're going to see which one of these also has a radius of 5. So you're going to do the equation x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So we'll start with the first set. Square roots of 10 is x, so square roots of 10 squared plus 0 squared equals 5 squared. right? So square root of 10 squared is 10, 0 squared is 0, and 5 squared is 25. 10 plus 0 is 10 equals 25. That is incorrect, so you need to try the other two to see which one does equal. You want it to say 25 equals 25. Remember, the 5 is going to stay, and you're just going to switch these to your other points you're looking for. Number 9 is a little bit of a trick question. They say the graph of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c is a parabola that opens up and has a vertex at negative 2, 5. All right, so here we are, and we have a graph, and there's a parabola that has a vertex at negative 2, 5. So say 1, 2, and then up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a parabola, and it opens up from here. That's what a parabola looks like. And it says, what is the solution set of the related equation 0 equals ax squared plus bx plus c? All right, so if you'll remember, this is y. It's y equals x squared. So if y is 0, well, y is only 0 on this line, right? On the x line, y is 0. And this graph here, it's never going to touch the y line because it opens up from negative 2, 5. So that's no solution. There is no solution to this question. On number 10, they ask us to find the vertex of which of the following equations is a parabola with a vertex at 2, negative 3? So they're asking us to write the equation. Remember, the equation of the parabola is y equals x squared. And this is with its vertex at the origin. So if you're moving it, you have to add numbers. Remember, left or right, which is your first, your x, you either go left or right, goes in parentheses with x. All right, so if we're moving right, which we are because this is a positive 2, right? To get to 2, 3, we're going to go 2 to the right and up 3. Down 3. What am I thinking? 2 to the right and down 3. Okay, so when you do this, to go left or right, you either add or subtract a number in here. It's actually backwards. So if you're going right, you're actually going to say minus 2. And you put the squared there. And then plus or minus, whether you go up or down. And this one's going down, so you're going to minus 3 right there. So that's how you change the vertex of a parabola. Number 11, they ask about the line of symmetry. So if you'll remember, the equation for the line of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. All right, so they give us these equations. The line of symmetry for the quadratic equation, y equals ax squared minus 16. I'm really struggling today, guys. Minus 16x minus 3 is x equals 2. All right? And they want to know what's the value of a. So they give us x. We know x. We know b, but we're looking for a. All right? So x is 2, so the equation would look like this. 2 equals, b is, in this case, b is negative 16, so it's negative 16 is a positive 16 over 2a. So we're going to solve for a. When your variable is on the bottom of a fraction, you move the denominator over here and multiply, so it'd be 2 times 2 is 4. A equals 16, and then a would equal 16 divided by 4, which is going to be 4. So a in this equation is equal to 4. All right, they bring out another right triangle here in number 12. Number 12 says, runners in a long distance race start out going 3 kilometers east and then head north for the remainder of the race. So they start out, they're going to head 3 miles, then they head north, right? The finish line is 5 kilometers from the starting line. So they just say if you walk a straight line from here to there, it's 5. Here's your right angle, and you're looking for this side of the right triangle. Now remember the formula for finding a side, if you know two sides of a right triangle, is the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So what you got to know is that c is always opposite the right angle. Okay, so c is your hypotenuse, it's the longest side, it's opposite. So 5 is c. So you know one of your legs and you know the hypotenuse. So you can do the formula 3 squared plus b squared equals 5 squared. So 3 squared is 9 plus b squared equals 5 squared, which is 25. A squared, 9, oops. We're going to move the 9 over and subtract it. So b squared equals 25 minus 9, which is 16. B squared equals 16. And then the square root of 16 is your answer. All right, problem number 13, we're going to do another vertex of the parabola, but this time they ask us to graph an equation. So we're doing what we just did a minute ago backwards. They say graph the equation y is greater than x plus 2 squared. So remember this one, it's only going to move one direction because it doesn't have an number added to inside and outside. It just has a number added to inside. So remember, if it's inside the parentheses, it's moving left or right, and it's backwards. So this one actually moves, it's positive, it actually moves left. So that means the vertex of my parabola was at the origin, now it's moving 2 to the left, and it's opening upward because it's positive. There's not a negative sign there, so it's opening upward. Also, actually I messed up on that. It's supposed to be a dashed line because it just says greater than. If it ever says greater than or less than, it's dashed. And if it says greater than or less than and equal to or greater than and equal to, then it's a solid line, all right? So this is a dashed line, so dash it. And then the next thing we need to see, because it's an inequality, if it's shaded inside the parabola or outside. So we pick my favorite point, which would be 0, 0, and put it in this equation, all right? So where y is at, I'm going to put 0 is greater than, where x is at, 0 plus 2 squared. 0 is greater than 2 squared is 4. Is 0 greater than 4? No, it's not true. That's outside, so that means inside is shaded because it is true. All right, problem number 14. They ask you to find a point that satisfies the solution set, is in the solution set of y is less than x squared minus x minus 6. So you're just going to take the points that they give you and put x where x is and y where y is and see which one comes out true. Okay, so we'll start with the first point, which is -2, -1. So y is -1. So we're going to say -1 is less than -2 squared minus -2 minus 6. All right, so -1 is less than -2 squared is 4 plus 4 minus 6. So -1 is less than 8 minus 6. -1 is less than 2. Is that true? Yes, it is true, so that should be your answer. Problem number 15, they say if a ball is dropped from a treetop 64 feet above the ground, how long does it take to hit the ground? So it says, then they give you your formula, seconds equals, S equals 16t squared. So you just put 64 where S goes, okay? So that's time. T stands for time. I guess S stands for distance above the ground, right? So 64 equals 16t squared. So just divide 64 by 16, which is 4, t squared, and then the square root of 4 is going to equal t, which is 2. Square root of 4 is 2. So it would take 2 seconds to hit the ground. All right, let's find the, they ask you on number 16 to find the value of b squared minus 4 times a times c in the following equation. So the following equation is x squared plus 5x plus 4. So the first thing to do is identify A, B, and C. A is what, B is what, and C is what. All right, so remember A is what is connected. It's the coefficient of x squared, which would be 1 because there's not a number there. The coefficient of x is B, so that'd be 5, and C is your constant, which would be 4. So A equals 1, B equals 5, C equals 4, and this just put it in this equation. 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4. All right, so 5 squared is 25, and then minus 4 times 1 is 4, times 4 is 16. So 9. 25 minus 16 equals 9. The next equation, they tell you to solve this equation using the quadratic formula. I love the quadratic formula. So this is the quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2 times a. All right, and the equation they give you on this one is 2x squared equals 8x minus 3. So the first thing you have to check out is it in general form? This one's is not in general form, because general form, everything's on one side except for the 0. All right, so you're going to solve for 0. So leave the 2x squared right here, bring the 8x over, it's going to become minus 8x, and then plus 3 equals 0. Now we are in general form, and we can say what A, B, and C are. So in this equation, A is equal to 2, B is equal to, watch it, negative 8, that's going to make a big difference, and C is equal to 3. All right, now we're going to do the quadratic formula with these numbers, okay? So B is negative 8, so it starts with negative B. So remember, you have to put negative and then negative 8, which actually makes it a positive. Plus or minus negative 8 squared minus 4 times A, which is 2, and C, which is 3. All right, over 2 times A, which is 2. 2 times 2. All right, so negative 8 makes a positive 8, plus or minus negative 8 squared is 64 positive, minus 4, we might as well do that. 4 times 2 is 12, times 3 is, 4 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24. I knew I was saying something wrong. 24 over 4. All right, so 64 minus 24. I'm going to erase the top of this and come back up here. 64 minus 24 is going to be 40, right? So we're going to say 8 plus or minus the square root of 40 over 4. All right, when you get to this, you need to check and see if your radical or your square root is a perfect square root. It is not. Your perfect square root numbers, if you'll remember, are 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, and 100. So this 40 does not have a square root, but does it have a factor that does? So 40 is divisible by 4. So you're going to separate this and say 8 plus or minus the square root of 4 times 10 over 4. All right, so this has a square root. The square root of 4 is 2, so it's going to come out here. 2, you still have square roots of 10 over 4. And then as long as all three of these numbers can reduce by the same thing, you can do that. So they can all reduce by 2, so you can reduce this to a 1, this one to a 4, and this one to a 2. So what you have left is 4 plus or minus square roots of 10 over 2. 4, so you have 4 plus square roots of 10 over 2, and 4 minus square roots of 10 over 2. All right, number 19, I think it actually is 18. What is the solution set of, they actually say, 2x squared plus x equals 15. All right, so number 1, you need to put it in general form. They don't tell you how to do this. Excuse me. You can solve this by factoring, by the quadratic equation, by completing the square. You can solve it any way you want, all right? But I would say probably factoring will be the most simple. You're welcome to do the quadratic formula. That may be simpler for you. It really doesn't matter, all right? So I'm going to do factoring. The factors of 2 are 1 and 2, and my factors of 15 are 1 and 15 and 3 and 5. And I need to make a 1 in the middle. So I'm going to go with 2 times 3 is 6, and 1 times 5 is 5. So 6 minus 5 would give me my 1 in the middle, all right? So these are my first terms. I'm going to have a 2x and a 1x. And then I want to multiply the 2 by the 3. So I'm going to put the 3 all the way over here. So outer I get 6. In the middle I get 5. And I want a positive 1 in the middle. So that means my bigger number, which is 6, needs to be positive. I'm going to subtract the smaller. Equals 0. All right. So when they want the solution set, you're going to solve both of these equations. You're going to say 2x minus 5 equals 0. And x plus 3 equals 0. So this would say 2x equals 5 and x equals 5 over 2. And over here you just say x equals negative 3. So my two answers are negative 3 and 5 over 2. The next two problems after this are both a square root method problems. Use my throat today. Number 19 says, determine the solution set of x plus 2 squared equals 36. All right, so remember this. If you have a perfect square binomial over here, you have a binomial squared. The easiest way to solve this is just to find the square root of both sides. The square root of anything squared is itself, and on this side it's going to be plus or minus, all right? So this says square root of x plus 2 squared is x plus 2. And the square root of 36 is plus or minus 6. So your two answers here are going to be x equals, we'll move the 2 to the other side, negative 2 plus or minus 6. So you're going to have negative 2 plus 6. X will equal that, or x will equal negative 2 minus 6. All right, so negative 2 plus 6. Negative 2 plus 6 would be 4, or negative 2 minus 6 would be a negative 8. So your two answers are going to be 4 and a negative 8. They want you to do the exact same thing on number 20, but they start with it looking like this. 3x squared, 3x plus 1 squared, minus 100 equals 0. So what you need to do is move the 100 to the other side, and then the same thing. You're going to square root both sides. 3x plus 1 equals 100. 3x squared plus 1, sorry. 3x plus 1 squared. All right, so just square root both sides. Remember, this side's going to be plus or minus. So it's going to be 3x plus 1, and then plus or minus equals plus or minus 10, because the square root of 100 is 10. So this one has one more step because there is a coefficient on your x. So this one, throwing stuff around. This one, you're going to move the 1 over, so it's going to say 3x equals negative 1 plus or minus 10, and then you have to divide by 3. X equals negative 1 plus or minus 10 over 3. So you're going to have negative 1 plus 10 divided by 3, and negative 1 minus 10 divided by 3. So negative 1 plus 10 would be 9 divided by 3, which is 3. And negative 1 minus 10 is going to be negative 11 over 3. So negative 11 over 3. So that's the solution set of these problems. Number 21, they ask which of the following equations has only one solution. So the first equation is x squared equals 9. So to solve this, you're going to just simply do the square root method. And remember, on this side, it's plus or minus. So x would, in this equation, would equal plus or minus 3. That's two answers, positive 3 and negative 3. The same thing in the next equation. It says x times x minus 1 equals 9. So this one says x squared minus x minus 9 equals 0. Ooh. Let's solve this by, I guess, a quadratic equation. We're going to find out if it only has one equation right now, right? So a in this equation would be 1. B would equal negative 1. And c would equal negative 9. All right, so negative b, so negative 1, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 1 squared, minus 4 times 1 times negative 9, over 2 times 1. All right, so it would be 1 plus or minus 1, plus or minus the square root of 1 squared, which is 1, and then negative 9 times negative 9 is plus 81. Oh no, it's 4 times 9. I'm really messing up today, guys. 36. 1 plus 36, which is 37. Regardless, we're going to get two answers because we still have 1 plus or minus square root of 37 over 2. So it's still two distinct answers. So let's look at the last equation. The last equation says x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 0. So in this equation, that's a perfect square. And its perfect square is, it's going to be x minus 3, right? X squared minus 6x plus 9. It would factor to x minus 3 squared equals 0. So if you square rooted this, it would just say x minus 3 equals 0. X equals 3. It's not plus or minus. It only has one solution because that's a perfect square trinomial. Problem number 22, they say the length of the rectangle is 3 more than twice its width. All right, so you have length and width of a rectangle, right? Length of a rectangle is 3 more than twice the width. So you have the width, we're going to call it x. The length is 3 more than twice, so twice the width plus 3. And they say the area of the rectangle is 119 square inches. So what you need to know is area equals length times width. So to get this equation, you